My first question is going to be to Prafulla. Okay? Inspiring leadership stories are not just about decision and about strategy. They come from far, beyond that, having a sense of purpose, risk-taking, deciding. Sometimes you go against the grain when somebody says that this is what, but that conviction that this is the way you want to go about it. So my question to you is, what are some of your leadership experiences where you had to evolve your leadership style to suit it and make it a win-win situation?
Thank you, Farangis. Firstly, thank you, Mindtree team, Mindtree Minds, for having me on this panel. It's very close to my heart to encourage people of different diversity, race, gender, to come back to the workforce, because that's what makes us as strong as we can possibly be. So thank you. Really appreciate being on this panel.
Wonderful.
Leadership. The one example that comes that's very recent, that comes to mind, is what we do with Mindtree Minds. Before we started on this engagement, I had several conversations with Jana, a very influential person, in my opinion, from Mindtree Mind. And one of the problem statements that we started off with was to say that we have all these teams that are working late into the sprint, late over the weekend. We start projects running from green status from the beginning of the sprint. They pivot over to red overnight, and they come back to green before the end of the sprint. The start of the project depends on which side of the bed we woke up from. It was a pendulum swing all the time. And that doesn't bring certainty. That brings in a lot of risk to the team. So we started to say, why? What is the problem over here? And when we did a lot more analysis, what we found was that within a sprint, we were running a waterfall. We had a development team. It would do development and only development. Then you had a QA team. It would do testing and only testing. It would find defects. It would volleyball it over. It would sit on the backlog for a while. Then the story picked up something else. So the last few days of the sprint was just a run to move all the stories to the finish line. Caused a lot of late hours, late weekends, messed up work-life balance towards the end of the sprint. So one of the things that Jana and I started to chat about and said, there must be a better way of doing things. And he'd worked this with some other clients where we came back and said, it's wrong to start to say that you're only responsible for one item, for coding, and not for testing. What we should be responsible for is the quality of the deliverable. So we eliminated the QA as an individual and the only role. Now, I say that very deliberately. We didn't eliminate testing. We didn't eliminate the need for quality. We said a QA that does only QA, only testing, is insufficient. Developer that does only development is insufficient. Let's combine the two. Our developer needs to be responsible for the quality of the development. It was controversial. It was worrying. It was a change. On paper, it looked fantastic. It's very easy for me to sit in my pretty chair and draw this out in a white piece of paper and say, look, this is ideal. Practically, there were many, many challenges. Getting the team to even appreciate this and see that it was for everybody's benefit was a bit of a challenge that we had to overcome. We started off with wanting to get to that vision. Even today, Kashi and I in the car ride here were talking about progress and whether we have the right balance of what we have as a vision. So my learning out of this experience was that it's good to have a vision. That sets the goal. But you don't arbitrarily march towards the vision with a single mind. You have to be open to taking a step forward, course correcting, get your team along with it. It takes a village to reach a vision. It's not an edict. It's not a singular person's idea in the mind. It takes everybody believing in where we need to go, and that's when transformations happen.
That's really true. So the vision is like the guiding star for them.
Yeah.
And almost as you talk about your development, similar.
You are iterating through,
Absolutely.
to reach that goal there.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yep. You course correct everywhere. You measure. You take your metrics. And for every 2 steps forward, if you have to go 1 step back, that's okay.
You're still making progress.
You're still making progress.
That's true.
Yes.
Prafulla, would you like to add on to this question? What what would you look at for some of these elements?
Thank you, Ritu. I think that was very well explained. I would also add that metrics is important. You have to be able to measure the change that you're making. And metrics could be either way. Sometimes you change for the better, sometimes not quite. But it's the metrics that go with it. Change should never be done because somebody felt so and that's what their gut said. There needs to be some science behind it. In my example with working with Mindtree on collaboration with different skill sets, we learned that there were a lot of problems, and the metric I was looking at was CSAT, or employee satisfaction rather. And it went down when we first started to work towards the combination roles because we didn't have the right base to keep them successful. And it was such a weird place. Here I was saying, your work-life balance is messed up. It's for your employee satisfaction that we need to make a change. And the change that we did was not helping it. But that was through a metric. And we worked on it. We looked back to say what the problem was. We invested back into our base systems, into improving our automation, into improving our engines, back to your point, build the engines, tell the customer, tell the people why, talk to my customers, my business partners on what we are trying to do, communicate, bring them back to understand the purpose of it, and then measure it again and see if that made a difference.
I think that's really true. What they always say, what can be measured can be improved.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is also, just taking a little bit away from this topic. When we put the measures in place at the beginning, then you already know what you're looking for, and there's no chance of a bias creeping in, as you mentioned. Somebody subjectively thinking that this is right or this is wrong. So,
yep.
Good. Prafulla, how do you manage it? You must be having so many things around.
It's really funny. Sometimes we have these potlucks at work, and then I see my team working, and I say, work is waiting for you. Nobody is going to come and do it. You have to take your break. Go get lunch. Go do it, because that work, when you come back, it's going to be there. There isn't a clone of ours who's going to finish it. There isn't anybody. I hope my team says this about me. I think what I would like to think about myself is that I trust them. I trust them to make mistakes and learn from their own mistakes. They're not going to learn from anybody else's successes. I think we are all a complement of each other. I am a complement of my manager. My team is a complement of mine. I am a complement of theirs. We're not in competition with each other. We each have a role to play. We each have a job to do. Nobody is going to be able to do another person's job. If we could have 100% redundancy, then we wouldn't have a job, right? They would be doing something else. So I think it's important to trust them, let them fumble a little bit, make a few mistakes. There isn't one that you cannot recover from. The mantra usually should be that don't make the same mistake over and over and over again. That's where the stop should come, not for making the first one. I think it's a circle of trust, and when you enable them to make their own decisions, you carve out time for yourself, for you to do something else.
That's true. With the trust also is the delegation part of it.
Yes.
Absolutely. How do you drive the consensus across divides of opinions? Because you work with multiple stakeholders, each person has their thoughts, what is the right way to do it. Sometimes they say that's the only way to do it. How do you manage to build that consensus?
Especially when you're going through a transformation, right? Every opinion is the right opinion, and no two opinions match. So what I've learned through my experience, my story is that here I had an idea about Agile. This was a few years ago. I went into a big group that had all of these leaders, managers, and I went off on my spiel. I had a 3-page deck. I never got beyond the first page because everybody had a question. It was full of words. It was a fantastic, very well-written document. It resonated with nobody because everybody got stuck at one word or the other, one sentence or the other right in the beginning. My point was never made. And then, so I took direct feedback, got some mentoring around it, and I've since used it many times. You start with a small group. A picture speaks 1,000 words. We've all learned that. I forgot to implement it. You don't need wordy slides to make a point. You need pictures to resonate. So a picture speaks 1,000 words. Start with a small group of differently minded people. If you've got everybody who's thinking the same as you, then you're not doing a transformation. You want to get people of different opinions and bounce that through. Make it a working session. If you convince your naysayers, then your naysayers are the easiest piece to convince. It's the naysayers that you need to get first. Get a conglomerate of people and then ideate, propagate it forward.
Okay, I know we are almost at the hour, but I do have one last question for you, Prafulla. And this is, the topic itself, leading like a boss, right? So what is the essential message you'd like to leave all our Mindtree minds with?
I'll share an example, a situation that happened at Delta. I'm sure you're all aware we're just coming out of the pandemic. The airlines took a massive hit. Many of the aircrafts were grounded. It was a very, very difficult situation for the airlines. No surprise there. And one of the first things that the airlines did when they resumed, was to block middle seats, because it gave a level of separation and then a level of comfort for people to start flying. Now, that happened for a period of time. Almost all airlines had blocked middle seats. And then after a period of time, they started to loosen it. They started to have the middle seats taken by customers, paying customers. At the end of the day, I'm sure you can imagine blocking middle seats and still flying a plane costs a lot of money. And if you can get revenue out of it, some airlines decided to do it. Delta Airlines was among the last ones to open middle seats. We blocked it for a long time. And Ed Bastian, our CEO, came into several town halls to explain his decision. Many of us questioned it. Many of us said, it's revenue. Open it up. Why are we not? And he kept saying that do right by the customer. The piece that he kept bringing up over and over again is a phrase that crisis doesn't build character, it reveals character. The character of Delta Airlines is to do right by the customer, do right by the people. We kept it blocked for the longest period of time. When we opened it up, sure, we had people taking those seats, but we only opened it up when the powers that be within Delta thought it was right for them to open it up, when it was right for the customers. I walk around in my neighborhood, I find people who say they'll fly Delta and nothing but Delta. There is a moment of pride there. There are people who associate Delta with safety, with customer experience, customer excellence. That is my message that I've learned, that I would love to imbibe, and I'd love for you to have too. Do right by your customer. Do right by the customer. Remuneration, accolades, awards, they will all follow, because the brand is what you should believe in. The brand is what we stand by.
Thank you. That was a wonderful story as well. I love it, when you talk about people in the neighborhood coming up and telling you that.
Yes.
That's so personal.
We've gotten a lifetime of bonds and friendship and associations now. We're very proud of it. So, yes.
And the conviction to, stand and do it when you feel that is right.